still a Tom E. Tuesday with Tom E. Curran of NBC Sports Boston. He joins us now here on WEEI. And, well, Tom, we've been talking through a few different things. What struck me yesterday, and we're not as up on the full news cycle, so fill in any gaps if I've missed anything. I believe Ryan Cowden either already spoke or is speaking today as well. The answer yesterday from Elliott Wolf about being willing to move a first or second round pick for a player that could help the team. Your thoughts on that, and specifically Wolf being the one to deliver the message?
Well, he was asked the question, so I would start with that, not to dispute that they want it out there. I think clearly, Adam, that's the main thing. The Patriots are unblinking in the notion that, hey, we'll do whatever we need to improve the team. The notion of a trade was first raised. Would you be willing to make a trade? And then Phil said first or a second, and he said, sure. But I wonder if that hypothetical would be tempered a little bit. Because the more you think about it, they have alluded to the fact that the $60 million in cap space, they're going to need to, and it's not BS. They have to roll some of it forward to next year because they're already over the cap for next year, and they're going to presumably bring in more decent players next year as well because they didn't do that great in free agency this year. It's part of the reason there's $60 million in there. So they are going to do that, but I do think that Wolf's interest is also in trying to convey not that Red Sox, hey, we're in on everybody type thing, but in an urgency. We're going to do whatever we can to get better this year. Last year we heard at this time and prior to this time last year, foundational, build. We'll see how it goes. It's not about this year. It's about down the road. And they've kind of at least switched their mentality and their words choice. So to me, that is definitely there. But the more I think about it, hypothetically, say you give up what ended up being the 13th overall pick, if you gave up a first for Micah Parsons, and you have to pay Micah Parsons $46 million a year, and however much money, and you just released Kyle Duggar and his $18 million, and in 2 years you're going to have to pay Gonzalez, and you're going to have to pay Drake Maye soon thereafter their money. It can really sneak up on you. I guess the question I'm posing is, to what end? Are you taking a shortcut in 2025 to add a player who's really friggin' good to bring you from 7 or 8 wins to 9 or 10? And now you've kind of taken away your first-round pick for 2026, and you've saddled yourself with a massive, one of the biggest contracts in the league.
Yeah, I guess the way I would look. Yeah, Tom, I would just think that
I've been looking at the $60 million, Rich.
Yeah.
I've been looking at the $60 million and go, let's spend it, you idiots. And then I started to think about it a little bit more today. What do you think?
So I'd be in favor of it for the right player because I just think if you take your draft pick, if he's half as good as Micah Parsons, you have you hit on that pick, and I think eventually the great players are going to get paid a ton of money. You know, we looked at it was weird when Tom Brady didn't always take top money, but you're not going to get athletes to do that or football players to do that year in and year out. So to me, that's the ultimate good problem to have. If you have what you think is a top-end quarterback, cornerback, and pass rusher, like, okay, great, figure it out in the other areas of the roster.
Mm-hmm.
But even with that, do you feel like any of those guys that have been discussed, Micah Parsons, Terry McLaurin, Trey Hendrickson, do you think any of them are even going to end up changing teams?
I would say Hendrickson would be the most likely candidate because they're actually talking about dealing him. I don't think that Jerry Jones, given his embrace of drama and his acknowledgement really in the past week or so of, I love the drama, good, bad, indifferent. I don't mind bad publicity. It would take away his most compelling player. I don't think Dak Prescott's a very fascinating guy. Your most interesting player is Micah Parsons. So why would you take away somebody who's good at the cash register for you? They'll figure it out. He's too good to let go. Terry McLaurin sounded like it was intimated by Jaden Daniels a little bit that things might be closing in down there. So your only possibility is Hendrickson. It's a 30-plus-year-old pass rusher. You'd have to give up $30 million a year for him. I don't dispute, and I don't think that enough folks are ringing the bell about how shallow the Patriots pass rush is and how much it's based on hope as opposed to hard proof that these guys are going to be good at rushing the passer. So I do think that there is a need for a pass rusher, but I don't know if Hendrickson at his age and price would be the right guy and the cost to extract him.
What's your understanding? You mentioned his name earlier. What's your understanding to Kyle Duggar and his spot on the roster, and why he is now playing with like scout team level and second and third team level players deep into preseason games? What's your understanding with Kyle Duggar and how it's gotten to this point?
He just don't move around so good no more. that's the long and short of it. We saw it last year. He was a liability, a literal liability for the Patriots defensively, unfortunately, and we attributed it all to injury because it wasn't in the very distant past that he was a borderline Pro Bowl player. But coming back this camp and this offseason, I'm sure that Mike Vrabel and his staff have looked at this guy even as he comes back from off-season surgery and said, yeah, it's not getting any better. And it's a large contract. We have players who might fit our scheme better as opposed to a big thumping safety. And it's not working. So to me, I look at it and he's just done nothing, unfortunately for him, to stop the cavalcade of negativity. I mean, when I said it a couple of weeks ago, who would you keep an eye on Winu and Duggar? It was more just based on he's an average safety, or at least, but he's being paid like an elite one. Now he's not an average safety, and he's kind of being paid like an elite one. So you can't have that.
Are you surprised that he's even still on the team? Just because they did make so many changes and so many of the veteran players moved on, whether it was just not re-signs or whether it was, sort of retirements or whatever. They a lot of changeover, and they knew what kind of player he was. They knew what kind of contract he had. Are you surprised he's even made it this far?
No, because he should be good. It was such a rapid decline. It's really only 1 year of suck. Okay. So to me, he should be a good player for them right now. And they had to confirm that he is in decline, and maybe it's a temporary decline, and maybe he bounces back someplace else, but he's going to be a hard guy to move via trade because of the size of the contract, unless the Patriots take some of the money back with them. But as I said, I don't know if I said it to you guys. I don't think I did, but how would you like to be Elliott Wolf or whoever has to walk into Kraft and say, yeah, we gave a 4-year, $54 million contract to Kyle last year, $18 million, a beautiful home in the Hamptons. We are going to basically burn in a fire pit out on the practice fields because of this.
Well, that's why, again,
it's a tough go.
Yeah, that's why I was surprised he's the guy being like, yeah, we're trading a first or second round pick, but you already answered that. He was asked the question, so fair. He answered that. You mentioned it's been a year of suck for Kyle Duggar. It's been a few practices of suck for Steph Diggs. I don't know if you feel like that's too harsh. Karen Garigian really detailed all this late last week where he's gone catchless in a bunch of these full team sessions. I know you and Phil covered this as well. What's the trajectory with Steph Diggs in that in the first team offense?
Yeah, Phil was out in Minnesota this week, and I thought he did a good job on our podcast kind of relating what his understanding is of the situation and how the team is viewing it. We talked a little bit last week about it just hasn't been as electric as it felt like it was going to be during the minicamp, off-season trainings, and the early push to camp where he was making catches like, oh, yeah, that's a number one looking receiver. And then it's kind of just faded away. And last week we saw a drop in one practice to end the practice and just not a lot of contributions. And we started to, especially with the Diana Rossini conversation, in which he intimated that, geez, I don't know if I'm going to be ready for week one, that we might see some smoke there. And in talking to Phil, he said that his understanding is that they're happy with where Diggs is. They want to slow play it a little bit more. He's proven what he can. There is nobody who is feeling as if he is yet a pain in the ass. It has not been a problem. So I think that does look too bad for Stefon Diggs if his reputation precedes him and we allow ourselves to entertain the possibility he might be a pain in the ass. So if he feels bad about that, sorry. That we speculated that might be the case. But we're here to at least acknowledge that so far, ass not having pain.
That's a good sign. That's a great sign. Overall, though, Tom, how do you feel about the first-team offense when you take into account the last preseason game as well as some of the practice reports the last few days?
I think it pretty okay. It's funny. We talked about this last night on BST for a little bit, and Andrew Callahan was in. And the one thing that, yes, it's friggin' annoying to see that every time you put a scoreboard on and refs on the field and people on the sidelines and people in the stands, Drake Maye F's up. Doesn't matter whether it's the stadium practice where he had a pick ricochet off Diggs on the first drive and threw a nonsensical pick to Alex Austin on the last one. Doesn't matter if it's last week's fumble or this week's air mailing. That is friggin' annoying because I'm down there at practice going, hey, thumbs up, oh, full speed ahead, Drake looks great. And then
right, exactly.
It's like the singing frog from Looney Tunes. Hello, my you guys don't remember that.
I know this.
I get that reference.
I get it.
Hello, my baby. Hello, my darling. Yeah. So
ragtime down.
It's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, you remember that one. So he's the singing frog for me. Every time he gets out there, he doesn't sing. It's annoying, but at least I will say this, and I do think this is important. At least he knows where he's supposed to go with the ball. And I know Dan Orlovsky did a breakdown, and it got some attention, rightfully so. Everything should get attention because the kid should be scrutinized. But I'm not seeing a guy who's patting the ball, looking around, retreating. He seems decisive. So to me, that's not something you have to set off, sparklers for. But I'm not seeing a guy who doesn't know whether to poop or go blind. He knows what he's doing. He just sometimes is. Put it this way: put on your seatbelts. He's 22. He's got a lot of skill, and sometimes that skill is going to cause him to do dumb things. So it's going to take a minute, and there's going to be some bumps and curbs that get hit.
Okay. Tommy Curran breaking it all down. You can check him out, NBC Sports Boston, Quick Slants, BST, Early Edition, all that good stuff here on WEEI on Tuesdays with us, on Jones and Keefe on Thursdays with WEEI Afternoons. Thanks for taking some time here, Tom. We appreciate it.
All right, guys. Great work today. Thank you for having me.